She was happy, or so she thought, but everything changed when he pushed her to do something she never thought she would, and it cost her more than just money. Mimi had always been content with her life. She loved her man, and he loved her back, or so she believed. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. They laughed together, spent time together, and shared dreams of the future. But over time, things changed. It wasn't dramatic at first, just little comments here and there. He would talk about women he saw on Instagram or in the street. Look at her, babe. She's got the perfect body, he would say casually. Don't you want to look like that? At first, Mimi laughed it up. He was just joking, right? But the jokes started to sting. She noticed his eyes lingering on women with slim waists and curvy figures, especially those with big bumps. Every time they went out, he would point out someone he thought had the ideal body. She would hear him complain about her own flat stomach and the way her body didn't quite measure up to the woman he admired. Mimi began to wonder if he was serious. Was she enough for him? The idea nagged at her, gnawing at her confidence. She wasn't a stranger to the pressure society placed on women's looks, but hearing it from the man she loved made it harder to ignore. She tried working out, eating healthier, but the comparisons kept coming. He would say some things like, maybe you should think about surgery if you want to get that kind of body. Mimi wasn't just any woman. She came from a wealthy family. Her father owned a successful chain of businesses, and Mimi had always been comfortable. Luxury cars, expensive vacations, designer clothes. It was all part of her everyday life. She had grown up with everything she could possibly want, and she was never shy about enjoying the privileges her family's wealth brought. But despite all that, her relationship with Tunde wasn't what you would call balanced. Tunde was charming, no doubt. He had a way with words and he knew how to make her feel special when he wanted to. But the truth was, he didn't have much to his name. In fact, he had very little. He didn't come from money, didn't have a stable job, and he seemed content living off Mimi's resources. Mimi had always overlooked it at first. She wanted to believe in his potential, that he would find his own way, build something for himself. But over time, his independence on her became harder to ignore. He had no steady income, and though he claimed to have big dreams, he was always asking her for money, asking her to borrow from her parents to help him out with this or that. And it wasn't subtle, it was always the same routine. Baby, I need a little cash. Can you ask your dad for some? But he never asked Mimi for once. Mimi, your dad has so many connections. Could you get me a job in one of these companies? He was that lazy and unambitious. Mimi worked in one of her father's companies, and it was easy for her to slip in a few extra benefits for Tunde, whether it was money, access to the business network, or some inside help. Her father trusted her, and Mimi had always been a good daughter. She wanted to do what she could for Tunde, thinking that one day he would get it together. But the more she gave, the more he took. He didn't just depend on her for money, he relied on her to solve his problems too. It started to eat away at Mimi. She had the money and the resources, but there was a growing emptiness. She was giving so much, yet he didn't even seem to give her the support or care she needed. He was always there when things were good, but when things weren't going his way, he turned to her expecting her to fix it. And this time with the BBL conversation, he pushed her further than she ever thought he would. That week, Mimi's best friend Lara got engaged. The news came as a wave of excitement and Mimi was genuinely happy for her. Lara had found the one and she couldn't stop talking about the proposal, the ring, the wedding plans. It was all happening so fast. As they sat together in Mimi's living room, Lara couldn't help but gush about how perfect everything was with her fiancé. I can't believe it, Mimi, Lara said, eyes sparkling with joy. He's everything I've always wanted, and now he's going to make me his forever. Can you imagine? A wedding, a family, just us, building our life together. It feels like a dream. Mimi smiled, but deep down something inside her stirred. As happy as she was for Lara, she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that maybe her own relationship wasn't as solid as it seemed. She looked at Lara's joy as the promise of a future together and wondered what she and Tunde really had. Was their relationship truly headed anywhere? Was there even a future for them? Later that evening, as she and Tunde relaxed on the couch, Mimi couldn't shake the thoughts from her mind. She turned to him, trying to make sense of the uncertainty swelling inside her. Tunde, she began, hesitating slightly. I've been thinking a lot about Lara's engagement today. She's got everything lined up and I'm happy for her. But it also got me thinking, what do we have Tunde? What is our future together? Tunde didn't look at her, his eyes still focused on the TV screen. He shifted uncomfortably but finally responded. Mimi, you already know how I feel about us, he said. We are good, but I need more from you. Mimi frowned, not quite sure what he meant. More? What do you mean? He turned to face her. You know the BBL I've been talking to you about. You've been avoiding it. But that's what I need, Mimi. I've told you before, when you do it, when you get the body I've been asking for, that's when I will think about marriage. That's when we'll take the next step. Her heart dropped. The word sinking deep into her chest. She was stunned. So you are saying you won't marry me unless I do it? You want me to change my body for you? Tunde's response was blunt. I'm just being honest. You want me to propose? Then you need to look the way I want you to. That is the deal, Mimi. Mimi sat back, her mind racing. Was this really what their relationship had come to? She had always loved Tunde, but now she realized something. He wasn't asking her to change because he loved her more. He was asking because he needed her to fit a mold that wasn't hers. And now she had to decide whether or not she was willing to sacrifice herself just to keep him. Mimi couldn't sleep that night. The conversation with Tunde kept replaying in her head, each word echoing louder than the last. He had made his demand clear, and now she found herself torn. Could she really do this? Was it worth to change herself just to keep a man who couldn't even promise her a future without conditions? The more she thought about it, the more she felt trapped. She loved Tunde, or at least she thought she did. But did love mean changing who you are for someone else? She wasn't sure anymore. The next day, she decided to do some research. If she was going to make this decision, she needed to know exactly what she was getting herself into. Mimi spent hours online reading articles, watching videos, and even reading reviews from women who had gone through with the procedure. The more she learned about the BBL, the more uneasy it became. It was a major surgery with real risk. Women had died from complications, others had faced years of recovery. Some had even experienced lifelong pain. The more she read, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a simple cosmetic surgery, it was serious, with dangers she had never fully considered. Yet, despite the red flags, something pushed forward. Maybe it was the thought of losing Tunde or seeing him slip away from her. Maybe it was the fear that if she didn't do it, she wouldn't ever be good enough. After all, he had made it clear that he wouldn't propose until she agreed. And Mimi had already invested so much into this relationship, she couldn't imagine walking away now. So she made the decision that she would go through with it. She called up a clinic and scheduled a consultation, and somehow it all felt so surreal. But that was more surreal was the fact that even as she was preparing for this life-changing decision, Tunde never for once brought up contributing to the cost. He never offered to pay a single penny. Mimi knew he wouldn't. In fact, she had a sinking feeling he never would. Tunde was good at getting what he wanted, but when it came to giving, he was always absent. Still, she convinced herself that this was a small price to pay for a future with him. He had promised her that he would marry her once she did this. He had promised. 3 months passed and Mimi's life was a whirlwind. The surgery was approaching fast. And though she had her doubts, there was a strange sense of anticipation in the air. Every day she reminded herself that this was the price she had to pay for a future with Tunde. She was on the edge of a new chapter. And even though it wasn't what she had originally envisioned for herself, it felt like the only way forward. Then one evening, after they had dinner at one of Mimi's favorite restaurants, Tunde pulled out a small box. Mimi's heart skipped a beat. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Could this really be happening? He got down on one knee, the dim light of the restaurant, casting a soft glow around them. Mimi, he started, his voice sincere but somehow distant. I've thought long and hard about this. I want you to be my forever. Will you marry me? Tears welled up in Mimi's eyes and her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe it. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment she had worked so hard for, the proposal she had dreamed about. Well, the proposal she thought she would get only after doing what he asked. But now it was real. Tunde had finally made her his. Yes, yes, Tunde, I will marry you, Mimi exclaimed, her joy flooding over her. She thought the ring onto her finger, and for a brief moment, everything felt perfect. She could almost forget about the surgery, the risk, and the doubts. All that mattered was that Tunde had chosen her. They were going to build their future together. And though deep down she knew there was more to the story than just the ring, for a fleeting second, everything seemed worth it. The joy from the proposal was short lived. Just a few weeks later, Mimi discovered she was pregnant. At first, she didn't believe it. She took multiple tests just to be sure. But when it became undeniable, the weight of it all hit her like a ton of bricks. The last thing she expected was to be expecting. Mimi was shocked, but also a bit relieved. This was the future she had been hoping for after all. She wasn't just about to marry Tunde, now she was going to have his child. Everything felt like it was falling into place, even if it happened sooner than she had imagined. But as soon as she told Tunde, the joy she thought would come from their growing family quickly evaporated. Tunde's reaction was far from what she expected. He wasn't jumping with excitement or planning for a future together. Instead, he looked uneasy. His eyes darted around the room, his hands fidgeting in his lap. Finally, he spoke. Mimi, this isn't exactly how I thought things would go, he said, his voice shaky. You are pregnant? And yes, that changes things, but I don't know if I'm ready for this. I mean, maybe you should consider aborting. It's still early, we could keep things simple. Mimi's heart sank. She stared at him in disbelief. Aborting? You want me to get rid of our baby? Tunde, no. That's not an option. I'm keeping this baby. Her voice was firm, despite the flood of emotions raging inside her. The conversation that should have been filled with excitement, hope, and planning for their new family had turned into a nightmare. Tunde wasn't ready. In fact, he wasn't even pretending to be happy about it. There was no turning back now. Mimi knew what she wanted and she was going to have this child. The decision wasn't just about her anymore, it was about the new life growing inside her. Still, Tunde's words stung, and it became clear that this idea of a future wasn't in line with hers. As news of the pregnancy spread, Mimi's parents took action. They weren't thrilled about how things had unfolded so quickly, but the pressure to do the right thing for their daughter and the unborn grandchild grew. Mimi's father insisted that the wedding takes place as soon as possible. He didn't want any shame on their family, especially not with a grandchild on the way. Plans for the wedding were fast-tracked, and soon enough, everything was set in motion. Mimi, still reeling from Tunde's suggestion, threw herself into the wedding preparations. She wanted everything to be perfect. But as the plans moved forward, one thing became glaringly obvious. Mimi was carrying the weight of it all. She was the one paying for most of the wedding expenses, 95 to 98% to be exact. She was paying for the venue, the catering, and the dresses. Tunde didn't contribute much at all. He had his excuses. I'm busy, I don't know where to start, money is tight. But the truth was, he wasn't putting in any real effort. It was Mimi doing all the work, and the burden was starting to show. Tunde seemed to be coasting, letting Mimi take the lead on everything, the wedding, the baby, the whole thing. And though he wore the ring and stood beside her, it became more and more apparent that Mimi was doing it all. The one thing she was sure about, though, was that this was her choice. This was her family now, and no matter how little support she got from Tunde, she was going to make it work. The wedding day came and went in a whirlwind, and somehow everything fell into place. Mimi walked down the aisle, her heart full of hope for the future, even though a nagging doubt still sat at the back of her mind. She was married now, and she was carrying Tunde's child. She wanted to believe that everything would be fine, that he would step up and be the man and father she needed. But there was always a part of her that wondered if she was just trying to convince herself. 8 months later, their baby arrived, a beautiful, healthy baby boy. Mimi was overjoyed. For a while, it felt like everything was going to be okay. Tunde was excited too at first. He would hold their son and smile for the camera and pretend to be the perfect father in front of everyone. But as the days went by, Mimi quickly realized that Tunde wasn't the father she had hoped for. He didn't help as much with the baby. He didn't wake up in the middle of the night for feedings. He didn't take on the responsibility that came with being a father. In fact, Tunde often disappeared for hours, doing his own thing while Mimi was left to take care of everything. When she needed help, he would say he's tired or that he had work. But Mimi felt like his excuses were wearing thin. A few months postpartum, Mimi still hadn't fully bounced back to her pre-pregnancy body. She was adjusting to being a mother, learning how to care for their son while balancing her own needs. But no matter what she did, her body didn't snap back like it had before. And that was something Tunde never let her forget. Mimi, what is going on with you? Tunde would ask, his tone laced with frustration. You're getting bigger and you are out of shape. You look like you've let yourself go. Mimi tried to ignore it at first, letting herself know that Tunde was just frustrated. He didn't understand how hard it was and how much her body had changed after childbirth. But the comments kept coming. You've got to get back to the gym. You can't let yourself get fat. And it wasn't just about her body, it was about her worth in his eyes. Mimi felt like everything she did was under scrutiny. Every small change in her appearance magnified. It hurt. The words stung more than she could put into words. She had given him a child, brought life into the world, and all he could focus on was how she looked, how she had to look for him. The pressure built up inside her, making her feel like she was losing herself in a marriage that was supposed to be a partnership. She had hoped that after all she had done for him, after all the sacrifices, Tunde would step up, but instead he was pulling away. It had been over a year since Mimi and Tunde got married, and 8 months since their baby was born. Mimi was adjusting to life as a new mother, still navigating the challenges of motherhood while trying to hold on to her identity. But things between her and Tunde were no longer what they used to be. She had always felt the subtle shift in his attitude, the way he seemed distracted. But she pushed it aside. After all, she had so much on her plate: the baby, the wedding, and trying to regain some sense of herself. But one evening, as she was looking for a charger in Tunde's room, her heart sank when she noticed his phone lying on the bed unlocked. Out of curiosity and a sense of unease, Mimi picked it up. She didn't know what made her do it, but she began strolling through his messages and photos. What she found made her stomach turn. They were explicit pictures of women, and the messages, they were even worse. Tunde has been texting multiple women, flattering them with compliments about their bodies, praising them for being the perfect size or looking amazing. The same thing he used to say about women he saw on the streets or on Instagram. Mimi's hands shook as she scrolled through the conversations, her mind reeling. For months, he had been admiring women with the bodies he thought were perfect, bodies she could never match, and now it was clear he was actively cheating on her. His words to these women were filled with promises of attention and affection, things she hadn't seen from him in so long. He never looked at her the same way anymore. When Tunde walked into the room, Mimi was sitting there holding his phone in her hands. Her face was pale, and she didn't even have to say a word. The silence spoke volumes. Tunde's face showed no guilt whatsoever, and for a moment he looked like he might try to justify his action. Mimi, listen, it's not what you think, he began, but she interrupted him, her voice trembling with hurt and anger. Not what I think, Tunde. You've been seeing other women, cheating on me, and you have the audacity to tell me I'm not in shape? Yes, you are not in shape. Did I lie? Tunde answered her coldly. And yes, I've been cheating on you because you refused to do the one thing I begged you for, to be a perfect size for me, so I won't have to look outside, but you've been nonchalant about it. Tunde said and walked away, leaving Mimi crying and questioning her self-worth. That night, Mimi did what she had been avoiding for months. She rescheduled her BBL procedure. She tried to avoid it, tried to find another way, but now it felt like her only option. If Tunde wanted her to change, if he wanted to see her in a different light, she would do it. She didn't know why she was still trying to meet his demands, but the pull was strong. The idea of finally having the body he would approve of, the one he admired in other women, was something she couldn't shake. It wasn't about herself anymore, it was about him. The validation she sought was no longer from herself but from a man who was breaking her down. She scheduled the procedure for the following month, telling herself it was for her own peace of mind, even if she knew deep down that it was really just another way to keep Tunde. Mimi's parents had no idea what was really happening in their daughter's life. They thought everything was fine. They saw a happy couple, Mimi and Tunde, living the life they had always dreamed of. They were completely unaware of the emotional toll Tunde had been placing on Mimi, the constant pressure, the belittling, the cheating. They didn't know about the insecurity she was battling or the sacrifice she was about to make just to hold on to a man who had long since stopped valuing her. So when Mimi told them she needed a break, they didn't hesitate. She dropped off their baby at their house under the guise that she and Tunde were going on a vacation together, just the two of them. Some time to reconnect. Her parents happily agreed to watch their grandson, believing it was simply a chance for Mimi to recharge and find some peace. The truth, though, was far from that. Mimi was walking into a decision she couldn't take back. She had rescheduled the BBL procedure, this time with a sense of finality. She told herself it would fix everything. Maybe it would make Tunde see her in a different light. Maybe it would be the turning point in their relationship, the one thing that would make everything fall into place. But deep down, Mimi was already starting to feel like she had given up too much of herself for him. Tunde accompanied her to the clinic, acting as though everything was fine. Even though his mood had soured over the weeks, he wasn't excited or supportive. He was just there, passive and distant. The procedure started without a hitch. Mimi was in good hands, or so she thought. But halfway through, something terribly went wrong. There was a complication during the surgery, something that wasn't expected. The doctor scrambled, but the situation quickly escalated. Tunde, hearing the news, panicked. For a moment, he seemed concerned, but only for a moment. The next thing, he was gone. Tunde had left. The man who had demanded so much from her, the man who had pushed her into this decision, had walked away the minute things went wrong. He wasn't there when she needed him most. He wasn't there when the doctors needed him to sign some forms or make decisions. The procedure was supposed to fix things, but instead it took her life. Mimi never woke up. Mimi's parents were devastated when they found out. They had no idea what had been happening in their daughter's life, what kind of man Tunde truly was, or how badly he had treated her. They couldn't understand how it had all gone so wrong. And Tunde, he disappeared after the tragedy. His true nature was revealed in the worst possible way. The man who had pushed Mimi to change for him, who had demanded she sacrifice everything including herself, was gone without a trace. Moral of the story: no one should ever have to change who they are for someone else's approval. True love is about acceptance, respect, and mutual support, not manipulation or demands. Always prioritize your own happiness and well being above anything else. If you found this story powerful, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like, and comment below. Would love to hear your thoughts and have you join the conversation. See you in the next one.